Okay, I am going to go ahead and officially start. Um, I assume that there will be a number of people that come back to watch this later. There will be a bit of a curriculum, but my plan today is to go over sort of basic principles that address understanding music theory from the perspective of someone who hasn't played a musical instrument before. And if you do play a musical instrument, from filling in, this will be like filling in some understanding for you, hopefully, about what it is that you are playing and give you some terms to understand it better. One way I like to understand music theory is with the metaphor of looking into a room through a window. And this is a metaphor that I heard on a podcast I was listening to about the Bible, actually. Looking at the lens at which you look through something can affect it. So let's say that music is like a room, and that room has windows, and you're looking into it through a window. I think that everybody understands music to a degree because you have listened to it at some point in your life, and so you've had a glimpse into that world of music, and the chance is that that world is really special to you. And so I think that sometimes, because musicians are more well practiced or well studied people that are kind of more in the music world, can sort of invalidate the specialness that music has for you because they can talk about it differently, or you think they really understand it, or the great like we feel like there are certain people who are given a golden key card into music called talent, which I think I do not want to dismiss the existence of talent. I think that it's a real thing. However, someone else's talent for music does not make your view through the window that you're looking through any less special. Now, to bring that back around to what I want to talk about, looking at music from a theoretical perspective is like walking around to another wall of the room and looking at music through a different window. And hopefully this window is a little bigger and a little wider than the previous than what you've looked at before, and this will enrich what is already wonderful and special, and I obviously the biggest window into music is our own ears, right? But learning the context around it and then learning how to play with it a little bit, I think, is also a really, really good exercise, and I think there's plenty of people that want to do that. So this is to help you out, and I'm going to talk about some basic theory concepts. I'll go for not too long. I'll try to keep it simple and straightforward, and also something that you can kind of take home and play with. So there's that little introduction, and I'm going to commemorate that. I'm going to draw a nice little smiley face up here. Look at that. Sorry, my brother just walked in looking for our dog. So the first thing that I want to talk about is sort of like base definitions that we can use around music. And the first one that we'll address is pitch. And actually, before I get into that, I'm going to jump to a different spot here on my little whiteboard and just going to draw you a picture to kind of illustrate the window thing a little more. When it comes, or what I'm going to talk about right now, and I like to use a pyramid as the example. Kind of, if you recognize this, you probably, it's like elementary school food pyramid kind of thing. This is the music pyramid. This is like the food pyramid of music. So you can also think about it like an iceberg. That's another good metaphor. But when you're listening to music, what you're hearing is this. You're hearing the very, very tip top of the pyramid. And there's all of this stuff underneath it that's informing it. It's creating a foundation for what's happening to what you're hearing in your ears. And so what I kind of want to talk about and where we'll sort of go this month, this kind of trial, is we're going to start and we're just going to kind of walk up the pyramid until we get back. If you're really engaged, I would like to have you have your own song written, or a chunk of a song written at the end of the month, just like following these weekly lectures. I think you'd be able to do it. So we're gonna talk about like what I would consider a very base level of the pyramid. I don't think that there is a top or a bottom to this pyramid. I think it's hard to give hard definitions in music and in art, and I think that that's wonderful. But we're going to talk about the base of the pyramid, and there's going to be three things that I'm going to talk about that are the base of the pyramid, and those three things are pitch, rhythm, and timbre. Okay. And these are kind of, I learned these in college. I learned these terms in college. And there's sort of ways that we can differentiate different things and that are happening in music. Sort of, you can kind of like reduce music down to these three things. I don't want you to take this too far because it's really, where we don't want to go is we don't want to go into the world of using these terms to invalidate something that someone else has created, or to take away musical validity from it. But we're going to learn about them, and I think that they're really informative and helpful to help you understand what's going on. So we're going to start with pitch, and this is probably where we will spend most of our time, because it's where I'm the most informed. And probably where a lot of Western music is very, very pitch-centric. So there's like some big words that we'll kind of get into that have to deal with pitch, like harmony, which is chords, arpeggios. Oops, can't spell on my own whiteboard. Well, arpeggio is a little technical. So let's say like harmony, melody, voice leading, chord progressions, all of these are pitch related things. And they dance with rhythm too, but they have an integral pitch element to them. So I'm going to erase these words and kind of talk about what pitch is and where I want to start with pitch. So to define pitch, the easiest way to do that is to ask you to sing. So just go ahead and sing a note, like la or whatever. That's a pitch. and it's so what's happening, um, as Adam Neely says, music is just wiggly air. So um, a pitch is a certain frequency that we measure in hertz. So the wavelength of hertz. Some of you may have heard the term A 440, and that's the note that orchestras tune to in equal temperament, because it's the note A. So that is at 440 hertz, which means that it's a vibration of 440 times a second, and that is what's making pitch. Now, in our Western system, and in Western system, I'm saying like very heavily informed by European musicians, Western European musicians from France and Germany, and don't quote me on the history. Not a history lesson. I wish I knew more about musicology, but I don't. The pitches have been organized into 12 tones, and we organize them in an alphabet, sort of. So in English, the musical alphabet starts on the letter C, and then we walk from C, D, E, F, G, alphabetically until we get to A, and then B. So we use 7 letters of the alphabet to describe 7 pitches. And you'll notice that there are 7 here, and I said there are 12. I'll fill in the 12 in a second. But these 7 letters, these 7 pitch classifications, make up what we call, I'll write it in green because that's more fun, a major scale. And our system, oh man, scale looks really gross. In our system of music, major scale is king. It's a collection of notes. I tell my students to think about it like a bag of marbles, because you can organize these notes in different orders. So I'll play them for you on the piano. Hopefully you can hear it. I still haven't gotten my sound figured quite out, but there's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we're back to C. If you learned how to sing as a kid, you may know this like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Or if you've seen The Sound of Music, I don't know the melody off the top of my head, but that song just walks up the major scale and kind of dances around those pitches. Do, do, a deer, a female deer, re. Oh, it doesn't go up the scale. Maybe not. Don't quote me on that. Maybe I'll edit that out of the live stream because that was a little embarrassing. But that's okay. I am happy to be embarrassed on the internet. So this is like the king. It's like a collection of pitches that everything is informed by. It's a pattern that walks through music. All of our chords that we use, until we get into thicker stuff, come from this scale, come from picking notes out of the scale and putting them together in a certain organization. So we've got 7 notes. So I'm gonna also write numbers underneath, so you can think about it like that too. You can think about each pitch as a number. The major scale is also called a diatonic. I'm saying that like like your little children. A diatonic scale, which literally means 7 tones in Greek. So it's a 7-tone scale. Now, there's 12 tones, so we've got 5 left. And these ones get a little more confusing because they are sort of like they lean on these other pitches, at least for their classification. So we have C sharp, which is also known as D flat. And you can kind of guess how this goes. D sharp and E flat. Between E and F, there is no note. F sharp, G flat, G sharp, A flat, and A sharp, B flat. A little messy looking, but now we've got all 12 of our notes. So I will explain. Oh man, yeah. So I'm not going to number these up top because the numbers are not signifying. They're not to signify the number of pitches that we have classified. They're to signify the order of the pitches in a major scale, which is different. But you can see that there are 12 pitches here, and this is if you look at a piano keyboard, I've drawn it like a piano keyboard. So this bottom layer is the white keys, and this top layer is the black keys. And those are our 12 pitches. And so just about every song that you've heard on the radio, that you've heard in a concert hall, that you've heard played on an instrument like a piano or a trumpet or a bass or a guitar or a violin, draws all of the pitch information using these 12 pitches that I've drawn out, or that I've written out. More modern people, this is more of a fun fact, or if you're just into this kind of thing, they've divided up the pitches in half again. So that will lead me to the next thing that I want to talk about pitch. And I'm actually going to move to another thing here so we can. Oh, that's embarrassing. I had a bunch of notes written down. So what I want to talk about now, and this is just going to form a sort of a baseline for us, is this is all baseline stuff, right? Like bottom of the pyramid, and we're dissecting pitch. So I'll write like pitch 2 up here. So we have these 12 pitches that we've classified, and they each have in our equal tempered tuning system, they each have a hertz value. So there's kind of like C sharp is at a certain spot, and D sharp is at a certain spot, and hopefully that makes sense to you. I don't want to dive too much into this. I want to talk about the magical thing that is an interval. So the way that I explain intervals is like it's like a ruler. And interval is the term that we use when we're talking about measuring the distance between pitches. Okay? So I'll talk about because there are 12 pitches, there are 12 possible intervals. And we're gonna talk about them from the perspective of a major scale, or thinking about it in the context of a major scale. So I'm going to write out my major scale again. And we're going to look at the distance from C to each of the notes in this scale. So just to kind of keep it simple. So the distance from from C to D. Okay, I'm getting a question on the chat that I did not see, and I'm sorry, Kip. Thank you for asking. So let me bounce back to another slide real fast so I can answer. The Kip's question, which is, why is there no note between E and F? You'll also notice that there's no note between B and C. So to answer that question, I don't know. But it will, I mean, I do, but I don't. As far as the arbitrary note classifications go, I don't know why it was chosen that way. But it has to do with what I'm talking about in this other slide that I've got pulled up with intervals, which is the distance between notes. So once I explain that, it'll make sense why there's no note between E and F. So let me bounce back to my other slide here. Okay, so intervals. So we're going to talk about the distance between each of these notes. So C to D is what we call a major second, or what we call a whole step. C to E is a major third. Let me play these for you. So C to D. Da, da. That's a major second or a whole step. C to E, major third. Da, da. You can hear the distance between the notes. So C and D are closer. C and E are farther apart. Okay. C to F is what we call a perfect. Oh, this does not look good. Let's do this. Different color. Gonna run out of colors, Google. C to F is what we call a perfect fourth. I'll do an octave lower so I can sing it. Da, da. I always remember this interval in my head by singing "Here Comes the Bride" to myself. Here comes the bride. Right? So that's a perfect fourth, the distance between C and F. The nice thing about this interval is it's nice and it's really consonant. Well, I don't know if consonant's the right word, but it works pretty low. And it doesn't really have a major or minor quality to it. It's just like nice and powerful, like a power chord. Power chords are made of perfect fourths or perfect fifths, depending on where you play them on the guitar. Next interval. Perfect fifth. Okay, so perfect fifth, C to G. Da. C, G, perfect fifth. You can also think of Star Wars. Dum, da. Perfect fifth. So you'll notice that these go up just one number per note, right? So this is why I say we're looking at it from the lens of a major scale, and then I'll talk about some smaller intervals or just different or how we can alter these intervals would be the best way to say that. Okay, so from C to A, we get a major sixth. So all of these, da, da, beautiful interval. I love sixths. You can think of NBC, major sixth. Also notice that A is the sixth note in the scale. Are you seeing the pattern, seeing how this works? I bet you can guess from C to B what it's going to be. Look at that funny little word thing I just did. C to B is it's a what? It's a major? Oh yeah. Yeah, you're right. A major seventh, because it's the seventh note. This one is kind of crunchy. C, B, do, do, da, da, da. It wants to go up to C. A lot of tension there. So now that we've got kind of this thing with intervals established inside of the major scale, nice and neat, right? Major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh. The reason why I don't know why it's called a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. I bet someone could explain this to you that isn't me. But that's just what they're called. But the rest of them are major intervals, right? Major scale, major interval. See how that works? Now, I want to talk to you about the one interval that's smaller than a major second, which is a minor second. You'll recognize it from such movies as Jaws. Okay? And that is the shortest distance that you can have between any two notes. Now, so for example, E to F. Let me see if I can find good. Maybe. Yeah. So I'll use red here. E to F is what we call a half step or a minor second. So I'll play that. So here's C, D, E, then E to F. Da, 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 da. Half step. Okay. That is the smallest unit of measurement that you can have. Now, if I go back to my other... hold on. Go back to my other slide on pitch. A half step is the distance between each of these notes walking directly from C all the way to B. And I'll draw a little arrow of the direction that I mean by that. So C to C sharp or D flat is a half step. D flat to D is a half step. D to D sharp is a half step. D sharp to E, half step. And then when we get to E, there's E to F is a half step because that is the nature of so that's the intervallic makeup of a major scale. And we can talk about that. The intervallic measurements of a major scale go like this. And this is something that I should talk about in another live stream perhaps, because I feel like I'm getting all sorts of tangled up, and I'm so sorry if you're confused. But the intervallic nature of a major scale goes like this: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay? So that's how a major scale works, which is something I believe a diatonic scale is somewhat of a natural occurrence. Don't quote me on that. But that is the intervallic organization. And so the letters that are used in our system for describing what a scale is represent a major scale first. Because composers are thinking like that. Until you get into the 1900s with 12-tone music, composers are thinking in terms of major scales. They're not thinking in terms of the chromatic scale, which is what all of these pitches are together. All 12 pitches is referred to as the chromatic scale. So back to the bag of marbles. A major scale is a bag of marbles. So you've got 7 marbles in there, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? The chromatic scale is a bag of 12 marbles. So originally, these 12 notes existed to impose this pattern, this intervallic pattern, starting from a different pitch point. And I'll play for you what that means. So if we've got C, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We've got that pattern, it's really nice. But what if I want to start it here on D? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So you can hear that those are extremely similar, right? Only that they start in different spots. If I played all white keys starting on D, I wouldn't get a major scale. I would get a different set of intervals. So if I wanted a major scale, I have to raise the F to an F sharp. And then that creates the need for an F sharp. Does that make sense? Or I hope it makes somewhat of sense. It doesn't totally make sense to me. I find that when learning music, you just kind of have to accept it the way that it is, because no one sat down and said, this is how it's going to be when they started writing music. It's a cultural phenomenon like language that's been accumulating over hundreds and hundreds of years. And things have been changed and refined and organized more or less, and written down and not written down, and all of these things. But here in the year 2020, the majority of people that play music, like music that you and I are listening to, refer to this pitch system. So that's kind of the reason why there is no note between E and F. And then to start over, there's no note between B and C either. You'll notice there's no B sharp and there's no C flat. Just like there's no E sharp and no F flat until we get into some messier stuff. But that's kind of our pitch system. I've gone longer than I wanted to go. So I think I'm going to end this live stream and kind of touch on the next rhythm and timbre next time. If you are following this and kind of want to get, like, you want this to be a tactile experience, my recommendation for this week would be to sit down at a piano and label each key. So find out which note is with which key, and see if you can memorize all 12 pitches. And then the real kicker exercise that I'd like you to do is I'd like you to learn how to sing a major scale. So from C to C, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, be able to sing it from bottom to top. Knowledge is good. Getting it into a physical place where it is physically familiar to you is much better. So that's all I have to say for this live stream. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry if it was a little long. Thank you for your patience for my first try. I did not anticipate things to go smoothly, but I hope that this has been helpful to you, and that you have a